Now, can you believe it? China has been preaching about the virtues of countries working together and warned that big nations should not bully small nations. This is incredible stuff. Chinese President Xi Jinping was talking virtually to the World Economic Forum annual Davos Gabfest, and what he said was remarkable for its irony. Have a listen to this.
State-to-state relations should be coordinated and regulated through proper institutions and rules. The strong should not bully the weak. Decisions should not be made by simply showing off strong muscles or waving a big fist.
Waving a big fist. This is a nation that's indulging in trade sanctions against Australia and wolf warrior diplomacy, a nation that ignores international law in the South China Sea and intimidates its neighbours, including the so-called rogue province, Democratic Taiwan, with military might. Yet Xi Jinping warns about bullying and the prospects of another Cold War.
To build small circles or start a new Cold War, to reject, threaten or intimidate others, to willfully impose decoupling, supply disruption or sanctions, and to create isolation or estrangement will only push the world into division and even confrontation.
Confrontation. The hypocrisy here is astonishing. The very behaviour China is warning of is the behaviour that characterises its modern posture. Clearly, these words show China knows how the international order should work, but its warning of confrontation is pretty ominous, I reckon. I'm joined now by the Executive Director of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Peter Jennings. Peter, in this speech, did you find it encouraging that China seemed to know what it should be doing, or chilling that it doesn't seem to worry about what it is doing?
Well, it's a large steaming pile of hypocrisy, Chris. There's no question about that. And of course, Xi Jinping is able enough to understand the huge difference between what he's saying and what he's actually doing. An interesting element here is that he has used Davos over several years now to try to position himself amongst Western elites as being a progressive supporter of the rules-based international order. And to some extent, they seem to be prepared to lap it up. I think in 2021, that's probably much less believable now than it was a few years ago. But, you know, clearly the gulf between what Xi Jinping says and what Xi Jinping is doing couldn't be any wider. And I hope that people will understand that and actually realise that the warm words don't really mean anything when it comes to China relentlessly pursuing its self-interest.
Yeah, its actions are drastically at odds with what it's saying there. Now, put this into context with us in 2021. We've got a new administration in Washington. The Democrats and Joe Biden say they'll be just as tough on China, yet they're already opting into more multilateral agreements and multilateral diplomacy. Does Beijing see a weak moment here? And how worried should we be about their intimidation of Taiwan?
Well, as China has done with past new administrations, they're probing for weaknesses and they're looking to see what they can get away with. Over the weekend, just past, Chris, we saw an extremely high tempo of aggressive Chinese combat aircraft activity into Taiwanese airspace in numbers that we haven't seen before. 13 aircraft flying into Taiwanese airspace on Saturday, followed by a US State Department statement saying don't do that, don't bully Taiwan. And then after that, a further 15 Chinese aircraft flying in on Sunday. So this is a very direct test of the will of Joe Biden. So far, the Biden administration, I think, has been saying the right things. But what we have to wait and see is just how much weight is Biden going to put on the protection of Taiwan. I think we can be reasonably confident, but it is a new administration. Biden does have some form with Xi Jinping, and so what we're really all waiting to see is if he has moved on from the somewhat more positive relationship that China had with the United States under Obama to the reality of today, where China, frankly, is a much more difficult customer. And Biden's going to have to be prepared to stand up to that. his first test is going to be Taiwan, and I suspect we're going to see this play out literally in days and weeks ahead.
Peter Jennings, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
Peter Jennings there from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute.